So our statutes at number 131 say, the members of the community will take over the service of the work with all dedication and perseverance, participating in its activities, and in it they will assume functions and charges, investing their time and effort in a spirit of service and healthy sacrifice for the kingdom. Then it later says, the final discernment regarding the apostolate is in the remit of the authorities of the community. So basically, we're all assigned and not, we don't choose an apostolate. We're assigned an apostolate. You know, the authorities will look at your skills, at your talents, what you need to, go through right now or experience right now. Sometimes it's not even something you've done before. And they will assign you an apostolate. It's important that if you don't like, or for X reason you want to change the apostolate, it's not an individual process. Like, you know what? I don't like being a shepherd, so I'm just not going to show up. It doesn't work like that. You need to call up your formator, pray together, discern, and they will have the final word as to whether you stay there or they put you in another apostolate, right? So when I joined the community in 2018, I was made responsible for the youth group as the shepherd. And, I have never been a shepherd, so it's a bit, oh my God. But, as the months went on, I sort of like learned and took that in. And then a few months later, so I was made a shepherd like in June or something. And then in like October, September, my local responsible person came to me and he's like, hey, we're going to open this new prayer group for beginners, for people who've never been in a group, people from outside. And we thought of you to coordinate the group. And we're like, that and the other group? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a lot. Can I pray about it? They're like, yeah. So I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. How am I going to manage all of that, I went to prayer, took my Bible study, and the word of the day was the multiplication of the bread. And along with that word came a promise from God that he would multiplicate my strength. And so, I said, okay, I'll give my yes. I said yes. So I had both groups, the youth group on Saturday and then the other group on Wednesdays, right? And God was even so kind to me to confirm that promise that he had made, because as I was given as part of the first apostolate the task to gather youth to go to the World Youth Day in Panama. In Panama, there was an adoration, and someone proclaimed, someone is being restored in her strength. The Lord is multiplying the strength of someone. And I was like, that's me. And sure enough, after 2 weeks of back and forth between Costa Rica and Panama, because the first part of the World Youth Day was in Costa Rica, I think I arrived on Sunday, and on Monday I started working full-time like I usually do, right? So this is what the Lord does when you allow him to. Sometimes our human perception sorts of wants to control everything and decide what's good for us or not. But the Lord knows better, right? So now we're going to talk about that sort of brings us to another part, which is the evangelical councils. So as you know, or not, we are called in Shalom as Shalom missionaries to live the three evangelical councils, the same ones they live in religious orders, which is chastity, poverty, and obedience. And so we just talked about being obedient to your formator as he discerns an apostolate for you, right? So the formator for us, the community formator, Also, the personal formator, which is the person that you share your life with, but they don't have this link with the rest of the community. Anything that you say with your personal formator will stay there, right? But the community formator is the one who will sort of be the link with the rest of the community if there's any decision to be made. And so both of them are considered the voice of God for you, you know, which can maybe sound shocking from the outside. But one thing that we do in the community is pray, right? We don't do anything without praying. So when your formator prays for you in particular, and not just your formator, right? The formator is part also of the local council. The local council reports to the general council. So when the community discerns something for you, you better consider that it's from God, you know? Otherwise, why are you even here? You know what I mean? We need to trust that our authorities want the best for us, not what they want as human beings, but what God wants, you know? So that's the obedience. Now let's talk about the second council of poverty, the second evangelical council, sorry, which is chastity. So we don't have a uniform, we don't have a habit as other religious communities would have. The only thing we have is this, our towel cross, and this, our attire, right? This is what will have us recognize in the street as shalom. And so, because of that, we need to make sure that we represent, um, you know, what we are, which is not religious people, because we're not, but we have this commitment with the church, right? So there's a certain way that we dress. For example, ladies, um, you might have heard that we are called to not show our shoulders, you know, to not have like tops that, you know, end here. Or, you know, we don't wear like crop tops or stuff like that that will just show our skin. We don't do that, especially the shoulder part. We don't do that because it's bad. You know, there are other communities where it's totally allowed. There's nothing written about that. But it's something that in our charism, God has inspired us as our way to live chastity, right? You know, in the bottom part, ladies, we will be called to, if you're gonna wear something tight like a leggings or something like that, try to, you know, cover up the bottom part, you know, cover up so that it doesn't become a distraction for your poor brothers who are trying to live chastity, right? We're not there to tempt them, right? um Also, if we wear a skirt, we try to make it lengthy, a little down the knee or longer, you know, which is something that at first, I thought at first it only applied to the life community, but as I enter the community, I realized that we're all called to that, right? And it's a process, okay? It's a process. We don't come into the community 100%. I was, you know, oriented, and not even by an authority, because she saw something that she was like, "Hey, girl," you know. It's a form of charity with your sister. If you see something, you know, I've seen you know, postulants, you know, walk around with leggings as pants, and I wasn't able to do it, you know, um, because it's a tough conversation to have, especially if it's not someone from your mission, someone you don't know. So we have this duty to, you know, very in the spirit of God, and asking for all the assistance of the Holy Spirit, to very kindly say to your sister, "Hey, you know, try and put a little longer t-shirt," you know, something like that. um you know, I've known a postulant, I'm sorry, a vocational discerner who, you know, was dressing not according to what I just said. And so the person who accompanied her vocationally told her, but she didn't have the maturity to understand that it wasn't coming from a place of, you know, wanting her good or just preparing her for what's to come. And so she got mad and she didn't finish her vocational because of that. So because it's not something that's written in the statutes, because it's a conversation that's hard to have after you join the community, that's why I really wanted to take some time to just say it now, just so that it doesn't come up as a surprise or as a, uncomfortable conversation. And that leads us to poverty. So sorry, before I forget, I enter poverty. Chastity is not just in the way you dress, right? We see not in the statues, but in our writings, that chastity is also in the way you act, the way you interact with the others, the way you eat. It's a way of being. You know. So yeah. End of parenthesis. So now poverty. So um we talked earlier about community life, right? About um, how we in the covenant community we have the style to be sort of a family, and another way that we are a family is by the community of goods. What is the community of goods? So basically, when we receive any sort of money, okay, it's not only a salary. It can be uh, you know, tax money coming in or winning the lottery, whatever amount of money that gets into your hands, um, you would take 10% of that money, give it for the evangelization, which includes all these activities that we do in Shalom where people come and it's free and they have a cost. So this money goes to that. And also, as I mentioned earlier, our life community brothers also, receive part of that money to be able to maintain themselves, right? So this is the 10%. And then the 5% goes for the poor. What poor? Um, it can be poor from the mission, your covenant community brothers who just lost his job and is in a very difficult hardship situation, goes to the community secretary, explains his situation, and if it's been well done, there should be money reserved for that, and that person could be helped, right? Also, we have all kinds of charity services and activities in the community. We have missions that are basically just charity because there's absolutely no money coming in, just money coming out for the missionaries and the poor, like the Madagascar mission that your brothers are actually in right now. It's an example of mission that beneficiates from the 5% from pretty much all over the world, right? So this is how we live our poverty, you know. I mentioned that the life community leaves everything, and the first Christians, they would sell everything and put together in common. We don't do that as covenant community. That 15% is how we do that. Okay. Um, that leads us to, as we talk about, um, not living for the material things of this world, but living in poverty, that brings us to another part, which is work. So, work, professional life. In number 133, the statutes say, may the member of the covenant community remember that he is, before anything else, a disciple and minister of peace. And in the exercise of his profession, his first duty is, by the power of the Spirit, to bear witness and announce Jesus Christ. We are, over anything else, workers in the kingdom of God with the charism of announcing peace. And later on, 134, it says, may each member be attentive in order to evitate that work becomes a burden, a source of idolatry, or a disordered search for wealth and power. Work can never turn itself into the center of our lives. Remember the example that I gave you about me leaving the bank to work in the church? Well, that's just in the last 2 years, right? Because when I joined the community, I was a freshly graduated master of translation. I had done a master in translation, which my dad, who is a translator retired translator for the United Nations was hectic about, because before that I wanted to be a singer. Anyways, my professional life was always sort of divided between my dreams of being an artist and whatnot. So after I finished that, my parents expected me to get a job in the UN or any, big company, just a normal progression of a translator, right? But then just after I graduated, I went to Toronto because I had met the community in Brazil. That's where I met the community as I was doing a student exchange in my master's degree. Came back, I had met the community there, had love at first sight. Came back, discerned that it was my vocation. And so, along with the Virgin Mary, I did the 54-day Rosary Novena, if you know it. And basically, it was okay, now you need to go to Toronto, because there's nothing in Montreal. The brothers weren't there yet. So it was just like, if you want to be Shalom and you want to live your vocation well, you need to go to Toronto. So I went to Toronto, started sort of like, I hadn't even started looking for a job when a brother told me, hey, I have this restaurant, like this food court restaurant, and the restaurant in front of me, which is also a food court restaurant, is looking for people. Do you want to work there? And I was like, okay, just let me pray about it. And I prayed about it, and she was like, take the job. And I was like, but I just graduated as a master's of translation. She's like, take the job. So I took the job, which was just in my vocational year as well. Um, it was a grace of God because I worked part time, and then the rest of the time I would translate uh, the vocational book. I'm not sure what it's called in English. Follow Me, something like that. Anyways, which was great because I had been away in Brazil and whatnot. Actually, it was in Mexico because after I came back from Brazil, I went to Mexico. So the people of my vocational year had received this book and I hadn't. So by translating it, I was able to catch up. And so I worked in this restaurant for 6 months, and then later I found a job in a bank, my first job in the bank, which had nothing to do with my translation job because I was applying to translation jobs and I wasn't picked up. I didn't pass the tests. And so I sort of like and said, you know what? I'll go where the Lord leads me. And that is how, from there, I was called to go to Brazil on mission for 2.5 years in the life community as part of the Missionary Shalom band. And then after 2.5 years, I was discerned to leave the band, stay in Fortaleza for 1 year, and that's when I worked as a teacher in our school that we have. And then I came back here, did some teaching for a little bit, and then I started working at the bank. So you see that our job is not something that is going to determine our life anymore. We don't leave everything like the life community does, job and all, but we basically take all the important parameters that the world would have and put them sort of like outside and put inside as the center, our vocation. All right. So now let's talk about some last few points that the statutes talk about. 143 says, by the gift of hospitality, have your house always open to welcome your brothers in the charity of Christ, right? So as Shalom missionaries, hospitality is a strong thing, open your house to your brothers. For almost 2 years, I've had the grace of having my first apartment on my own. And so I've had the amazing grace to welcome my brothers. When it's girls, all girls, I'll share my small studio with them. So you can see, this is my studio. It's like one big room, right? You have the living room part, and then you have the like bed part, and then separately the kitchen and the living room. So when it's all girls, I'll just, sleep on the futon and they'll sleep on the bed or something. Lately, I've had 4 girls come in from Toronto because they did a pilgrimage for the youth. 2 on the bed, 1 on the futon, 2 on the floor. However it works, we'll do it, And number 144 talks about giveaway moments. Whenever necessary, may it be promoted within this covenant community strong moments of giveaway. In these particular moments, may each member and family of the community gather before Jesus, his gospel, in the spirit of poverty, and, examining oneself, give more generously their goods in favor of our evangelizing mission, and of our brothers in need.